Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nails and Beauty Talk. I am your host, Asia the Bird. To have a very special guest with me today. She is an artist and designer. Please welcome Rachel Motley. Hello, Rachel, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So I definitely want to go ahead and get started by asking where you're originally from and tell us a little about your upbringing.
Yeah, so I am a New York native, born and raised here. I've lived here my entire life up until I went to DC for college. And I am back here. I just graduated earlier this month. So I'm back in New York, back exactly where I grew up. And I guess in terms of my upbringing, like as Asia mentioned, I am a designer. I'm a multidisciplinary artist and love all things design related. And so, in terms of my upbringing, like it was something that both my parents were into. Um, and my mom actually passed away when I was 6. And so,
Mm,
afterwards, art really kind of became something that my dad encouraged me to further pursue. Um,
mm,
I guess as a ways like of finding a way to like cope, with such a
right.
recent loss at a young age. So I'd
Hmm.
say that I've had a very great and healthy relationship with art, and I think that it's kind of just continued to grow since then.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Now, what part of New York are you from?
I'm from New Rochelle, so
New
right
Rochelle.
above the Bronx. Yeah, I'm 10 minutes out from the Bronx, super close.
Mm.
Everybody's always like, "You're upstate," but I'm not upstate. Like I'm right there with the city. I'm right there.
Yeah, yeah, you're in the thick of it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, yeah. What were your interests before you got into art? Was it just solely art, or what? Did you have any interest beforehand?
So, I mean, I've always loved art, but I've also been very into entrepreneurship as
Hmm.
well. I remember when I was like in 5th grade, so 10 years old, I actually had my first business and I used to sell duct tape wallets and duct tape
Ooh,
flower pens.
wow.
That was how I made my money, at such a young age.
Yeah, yeah.
And while it obviously wasn't a lot of money at the time, like it was definitely something that I prided myself in. And
Mhm,
it just, I don't know, like it kept me busy. It allowed me to connect with other people, to
mhm.
learn a lot in terms of entrepreneurship. And so I'd say
Right.
that's probably always been my other interest. And so now that as I continued to get older, it was kind of about figuring out how I could bridge the two.
Mhm. Now, in terms of art, I definitely want to get into like your favorite artists. Like, what type of style of art were you attracted to? But also, who are like your favorite artists? If you had a top three.
So something that I always tell people is I'm like, I don't believe in favorites. I think that things tend to change with me. I guess as time goes on, I believe
Hmm.
in evolving with the times. And so I would say right now, I honestly cannot, I don't even really feel like I can really think of like a
Hmm.
particular artist that's my favorite. But the first person that would probably come to mind is Cause. So Brian O'Donnelly.
Right.
Um, I absolutely love the work that he creates in addition to just being able to create toys. I love that
Hmm.
really doesn't limit himself as a designer.
Right.
And whether it's sculpture and, seeing his work blown up into these very large
Hmm.
pieces or sculptures mentioned, paintings,
Right.
merchandise,
Hmm.
I mean, toys, like he literally does it all. And I think like to see someone recognize that they have this love for design and not limit themselves is extremely admirable to me. So I'd say that's probably one of my favorites.
In terms of cause, I like his work. His work is very, very phenomenal. Like how you said, I love like the sculptures.
Yeah.
I'm also into like Keith Haring, Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Yeah, yeah. They're classics, especially being in New
Yeah.
York, it's their influence and their impact is undeniable. I think even in terms of Keith Haring and just how at a certain point, like he was tagging in the subway. Um,
Hmm.
and I think to just realize how much of an influence he's been able to build, um,
Right.
from such a simple action and maybe something that I don't want to say that we take for granted, but we don't necessarily realize the impact of.
Right.
I think there are such
Hmm.
simple ways to expose people to your art.
Yeah.
And I think we, as artists, tend to feel limited at times. Like, I don't have the resources to put into exposing others to my art and to promoting it. And I mean, it gets down to being creative about how you go about exposing others to your art and really allowing people to have the chance to connect with it. So I would definitely say
Mhm.
that those are two other amazing artists.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I could totally agree. And also another artist that I really loved and admired is Salvador Dali. You know what I mean?
I'm unfamiliar.
Yeah, he's like a surreal artist, Hispanic surreal artist, and he did all these like melting clocks and tall-legged elephants and things like
Wow.
that.
Okay.
Another artist, is from Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci,
Yeah.
Michelangelo. I got into another artist. It was another artist that I was into. His name is Kirby Rosanes.
Okay.
He's a Filipino artist that I looked at and admired. Like he does like cool, very cool artworks. Another person, his name is Matt Cobra,
Hmm.
and he's like into like NFTs. He does like this NFT collection. He's the illustrator for this NFT collection called Savage Nation,
Okay.
and his work is very phenomenal. So yeah, there's so many works of art that
I'll have to check them out.
yeah, I'll send the links to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, yeah,
Sounds good.
absolutely. I want to move forward and talk about Howard University. So you just recently graduated, like how you said earlier, in May this month. So what was something that you majored in, and tell us about the college experience in regards to Howard University?
I had quite an interesting experience at Howard. I'm very thankful for it. Of course, I'll start off with saying that. So I majored in marketing. I was a marketing major. I originally came in majoring in econ. And
Mhm.
I realized that econ wasn't in school of business, and I wanted to be in school of business so badly. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick a business major. um,
Mhm.
I think at some point I probably was considering business administration and decided to move forward with marketing instead,
Right.
which I'm very glad that I chose to do so. So that
Mhm.
was my major. From there, in terms of my experience at Howard, so we actually we got sent back home in
Mhm.
March of, I want to say 20, mm, it's a blur. Oh, I want to say 2019.
Okay.
So my sophomore year, I
Mhm.
believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was either 2019 or 2020. Like I said, it's
Mhm.
honestly like quarantine was a fever dream. I can barely remember anything. But with that said, we got sent back home, and at the time, I was going through a breakup.
Mm.
I was completely devastated, and I didn't really necessarily foresee myself being an artist, to be very honest. I knew that I wanted to have some kind of business career and I wanted to incorporate art within it, but I never saw myself as like, actually being an artist full time.
Right.
And so quarantine was really the time where I was like, I need something to keep my mind busy. I was crying every single day. Like when I say this man had me out sad.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it was not good.
Oh.
But I started painting because of that.
Mhm. Right.
And I began sharing my work on social media. And from there, things kind of just, they just kind of took off.
Mhm.
So I think going back to campus, there was definitely a lot of healing that had to be done, honestly.
Mhm. Right.
But I'm very thankful for it. I think now it's funny to look back on and to be like, oh, like, this is kind of what got me to where I am. It's
Mhm.
humorous now. It definitely wasn't humorous at the moment.
Right.
But I think, yeah, it's just like college was definitely a growing period for me. It was
Right.
troublesome in a lot of ways, but I am very thankful for how I came out of it and the lessons that I've learned. I think particularly my junior and senior year, I like really locked into my craft and just what I was passionate about.
Right.
Um, Prior to getting into illustration and design, I mean, I was a graphic designer. So when
Mhm.
I first came into Howard, I was like, I need a way to make some money.
Right.
Um, I need a little coin. We're in college and we're going to parties and we want to eat out all the time and do things with our friends, experience the city. And so I started making party flyers. And that was like really my way of just, making a little something. I
Mhm.
didn't have as much creative control as I wanted. And so I think that's really what kind of catapulted me into the direction of illustration when I went home for quarantine. Um,
Mhm.
Illustration and painting. And I kind of left graphic design behind because it didn't really provide me the privilege of
Mm-hmm.
being like, hey, this is what I want to make right now. And when you're doing graphic design, you're doing flyers for people. People are telling you what they want, and there's
Right.
only a certain extent to which you can involve your own artistic preference and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, at my core, I've always been an artist. I've always been into design, but I would say, I mean, generally, I think everything worked out the way that it was supposed to. Like I said, I
Yeah.
learned a lot. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
thankful for the journey now that I reflect on things, and just the woman that I've evolved into. So college
Mm-hmm.
was as difficult as it was at some points. Um, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, it's monumental. I get to say that I graduated from Howard University. And I think another thing was like the difficulty of being a creative in college, which is not something that I think people talk about all the time. Like there were times where I genuinely was very depressed because I
Mm-hmm.
felt as though I found something that I loved and I didn't even have the time to devote to it the way that I wanted to. So that
Mm-hmm.
was really like my junior and senior year. I was like, wow, like I love design. I love art. Here I am,
Right.
marketing major at the time, and I was just starting to get involved with like my core classes. So
Mm-hmm.
up to that point, I wasn't learning anything specifically about marketing, and I think that was just an immense struggle. But I am
Mm-hmm.
very, I'm glad to say that I finished and that I stuck it through and got to make my family proud.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing because what I find very interesting is that you didn't go to like, school visual arts or like
No,
vis- I'm surprised, because I know you did.
not technically trained.
Yeah, I mean, but that's cool though. You have your own, unique aesthetic and things like that. But
Thank
and
you.
also too, you had something that pulled you through, which was creating art.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Through those
completely. I mean, I said I think it was like September of 2022. I was talking to my friend and I was like, people don't realize like art literally saved my life. Like when
Yeah.
I was just at such a bad point, whether it had to do with things pertaining to my family, things pertaining to college, and
Right.
something like a breakup. Like at the end of the day, I always had art to fall back on and to keep me going. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean that is just it's invaluable.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, which is, scat in Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I majored in illustration with like a focus of like pattern design, but also to my minor was fibers, which was like yarn, related stuff like,
Ah, yes.
crocheting, felting, natural dyeing and things like that. So, just being in that, and sometimes being in that environment, like how I was in that creative environment, that makes things easier because it motivates you to be creative and things like that.
And you're
You know,
surrounded by other creatives as well,
yeah.
obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that like I don't imagine myself doing anything else other than art.
Hmm.
I got into art since like second grade, and I was like,
I love
yo,
that.
I got into this art class that I had to take, like second or third grade, and that was it. I was like, I don't want to do nothing else. I don't care about, math and writing and things like. I mean, of course, you got to do it to pass,
Of
but
course.
it's, but art was something that I really, enjoyed doing, and that was my escape. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But also over the years, I was able to develop my own style. So, and that's how, like, not only just having art on canvas, but it's also another form of canvas to have art on is nails, which I, just started.
Yes, you do such an amazing job.
Thank you. And so I took cosmetology courses in my high school and I got my cosmetology license. So, it's just like,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah, I'm a licensed cosmetologist.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So, that's really the thing, where a lot of people rely on art as an escape, and art is pretty much the reason why the world moves around. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
completely. It is what keeps the world going. Yes.
Yeah, architecture, illustration, graffiti, and things like that, so music,
Music.
music has a huge influence, like Earth, Wind and Fire or Slave or like Parliament Funkadelic. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, those are like my favorite, bands and artists, that I've listened to. So, you know, art pushes everything forward and art helps heal the soul.
Yes. You're
Yeah.
spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely want to go ahead and move forward by, asking about, in terms of your, your art business. So what has been the journey of you having your own art business? Because I know you sell, you do logo design, creative direction, and garment customization. So what has been the journey in terms of having your own art business?
I feel as though it's constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
I am, to be very transparent, something I love about being a project-based artist is that I'm
Mm-hmm.
always able to try something new.
Right.
And I think, to be very honest, like I do get tired of things quickly. I'm like, all right, like what do we have next? What are we
Same way.
yeah. I'm ready to get my hands on something new.
Right.
So I think that in terms of my business, it's constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. Like I said, I started off with graphic design. So I started off with making flyers and logos, and then it turned into me designing Christmas cards at one point, and then making prints and selling prints.
Mm-hmm.
And then designing a jacket for Michael B. Jordan. Like when I tell you at this point I've tried it all. I'm like, I'm ready for furniture and interior design. That's definitely like up on the list somewhere.
Right.
But I would say like I I really believe in just moving and evolving with the times. Whatever it is that I'm interested in that moment,
Absolutely.
that's where my interests are gonna lie. And so
Yeah.
I think in terms of business, it's just been constant changes. Right now I'm at the point where I'm ready to start consulting. And so the framework
Mm-hmm.
of my business is going to look completely different and as uncomfortable as it can be. I do strongly feel as though I took the time to try the things out that I loved that served me, and now I'm really ready
Right.
to serve other people. I want to
Right.
serve other artists. I want to help other artists build their brands and
Yeah.
their just their social media, becoming more confident in the talents that God has given them. And
Right.
so I would say like that's probably what's next up. Those are the changes that are going to come within my business next.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't been the easiest. So in addition to actually creating the art, I also handle the operation side. So I'm the person that negotiates for myself. I'm the one creating my schedule. I'm
Right.
the one who is going back and forth in emails and figuring out deadlines and
Mm-hmm.
timelines. So
Right.
when you're on the logistics side, in addition to actually creating, it
Mm-hmm.
can be, it can take a lot of energy out of you.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I
Mm-hmm.
I really have an appreciation for it because of how much I've learned
Mm-hmm.
and just I guess also how much I'm able to now help guide other artists and other creators. I have my
Mm-hmm.
friends who will call me up like, "Hey, this is what they're proposing for a brand deal. Like, what do you think about this?" And
Right.
I can be like, "Go higher," and know your worth. And because I've had experience on the logistics side in addition to actually creating the art. I mean, I think that
Mm-hmm.
it's really given me a very unique perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and one that's really equipped me to help other people. So I would say that that's where
Mm-hmm.
business is at right now, and um, I'm trying not to rush its evolution. I'm trying to be patient with
Right.
myself and patient with my journey, because,
Absolutely.
like I mentioned, when you're someone who gets bored of things quickly, it's very easy to be like, okay, what's next,
Mm-hmm.
and completely forget about being present in the moment that you're experiencing and having
Mm-hmm.
gratitude and appreciation for that. So I would definitely say that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, but to add on to that as well, I like what you said in terms of like understanding your worth and your value, because I think that's something that's very, very important as a creative, as an artist.
Yeah.
Because like with me being not only an artist, in the whole creative realm, but
Mhm.
also I'm in the beauty realm. So the
Yeah.
thing is, with nail artists now, like myself, we're understanding more of our worth and our value, charging what we're worth, with our nail sets that we create, and
Exactly.
other nail services, like over $100 or so. So I'm glad that there's more conversations now being had in the nail industry talking about the importance of understanding your worth and your value and charging what you're worth. You know what I mean? Because there's people out there that will, have a mindset that nails should be cheap. And it's
Yeah.
not cheap, because we're spending a lot of time creating the bodies of work. We're spending a lot of time in terms of, building a great set of nails, you know, with complex designs and things like that, especially for celebrities, that go on the red carpet and things like that. So, there's worth and value in terms of artwork, not just, artwork that's on like a big canvas.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the conversation around understanding your worth for artists is so crucial. It's, conversations around money and compensation tend to be taboo,
Right.
and especially with art just becoming, I mean, art's always been prominent, but I think the way that
Right.
people are taking the time to value artists now is at a level at which I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it really opens up the floor for these conversations. I can
Mm-hmm.
literally attest to something that just happened to me today. And I was in conversation with a brand,
Mm-hmm.
gave them my price. And I mean, I won't even say it was my price because, to be very
Right.
honest, I lowballed myself completely.
Mm-hmm.
And um, at this point in my journey, I think that there's an expectation that I have for myself where I'm like, I wouldn't expect myself to still be lowballing myself. That was something I did 2 years ago,
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
I was beating myself up about it over the weekend. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I have all these deliverables. I'm making content. I'm creating actual, tangible assets, in addition
Mm-hmm.
to, just plenty of deliverables. And so
Right.
I
Mm-hmm.
felt I felt so discouraged, but I also had to remember that whenever I'm up and I'm talking to other creators on any kind of platform, I'm always the person that's like, know your worth.
Right.
And I had to check myself because I'm like, I'm not even practicing what I preach. And so
Mm-hmm.
um, I was kind of dealing with the fear of presenting unprofessionally or just it being taken the wrong way,
Right.
if I tried to renegotiate. But I had to talk myself out of that. And I had to remind myself, like, hey, this is what your worth is. We're not
Mm-hmm.
settling for less. Go
Absolutely.
ahead and ask for
Mm-hmm.
your price. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm very grateful now that so many brands are open to having these conversations
Right.
and that they understand the struggles and the plights that creatives tend to deal with. So
Mm-hmm.
thankfully, I was able to go back and speak with the team and renegotiate for the project, which, that's not something that people get to do all the time. But
Right.
I mentioned that to say, like, you will only be paid to the standard that you hold yourself to. As
Right.
long as people don't know this is the standard you're holding yourself to, they're not going to pay you that. So
Right.
you really have to learn to advocate for yourself. You have to know what you're worth. I always say, go with the price that scares you. If you're comfortable giving the price, go higher.
Right.
And so, yeah, just learning to know your worth, learning to do it scared, and
Right.
getting not I don't want to say getting over that fear, but working through that fear is just so important for us as creators.
Absolutely. I definitely wholeheartedly agree with that. I definitely want to get into your blog, Good Art. Why did you start the blog?
Yeah, so okay, that's a great question. I had the blog when I first started my website. That's actually what my website started off as. Started off as a blog. Then I
Mm,
created products and really started to streamline those. Um, and I had really like fallen off with my blog, to be very honest. I probably hadn't
mm,
updated it in like a year or two.
mm,
Yeah. So the work was kind of just sitting there. It was just living on the site. And then my senior year, I had this was September of last year. I had I think it was like a journalism class, but we had to work on a magazine for the School of
mhm.
Business in addition to creating our own blog sites. And I was like, oh, well, I have a blog site. I'm sorry, I'm trying to like block the kid jumping. I have a blog site myself. So why not use this for my class assignment?
Right.
And that's kind of where I ended up starting over,
Mhm.
and I got the name Good Art. It was inspired by the Bible, honestly.
Mm,
So in Genesis it talks about creation, and the days that God took to create, and
right.
it says that after he created, it says like, and it was good. And I think that just the connection that I felt to creation and to art, to it being something so divine, and
Right.
to it being a talent that is God given. I really wanted to, honor God in the way that I named my blog. And so that's how I came up
Mhm.
with Good Art. And from there, it kind of just continued because it had to, because I needed a grade in the class. Um, and it definitely ended up being a resource that was extremely informative for other artists and very helpful.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where it started. That's the genesis of good
Mm,
art, and I probably need to add to it again soon. But I've been all over the place. But that is
right.
blogging is fun.
Yeah, in one of your blog posts, you talked about how you first launched your line of prints and they sold out in 4 days.
Yeah.
So for those who want to sell their own prints, like how does one go about selling their own prints, but also how does one look for the right manufacturer for prints?
So when I first sold prints, I was outsourcing.
Hmm.
I worked with a print shop in upstate New York called Cat Print. I believe that's what it was called, Cat Prints.
Hmm.
And they were absolutely amazing. I mean, the quality was amazing. I was able to order samples, approve everything, and then go ahead and place the complete order. At that point, I really had no gauge for the amount of people that were going to be interested. I
Hmm.
was like DMing people on Twitter, and like anybody who retweeted my artwork, I was like personally messaging them like, hey, just want to let you know, like, I'm preparing for a launch. In case you were interested, like, here's my
Hmm.
exclusive print. They'll be available on like June, July, something. So um, from there, it was kind of just like, all right, let me sit down and calculate the cost of everything. Like I said, I was a business major, so it
Hmm.
was very helpful to understand like how to make an Excel sheet and
Right.
how to calculate my expenses and
Hmm.
take into account like, all right, I got to go get mailers, like cardboard mailers to actually send out the prints. I have to account for packaging costs and
Right.
packaging expensive, everything along those lines. So after calculating all of that, I was like, all right, I set my prices. And I remember reading like that you should either double or anywhere between doubling and tripling
Right.
the price of your prints for to have a, decent profit margin.
Right.
Um, and so that was kind of that just it went from there. It was a lot of promotion, but I mean, it paid off. And
Hmm.
afterwards, I was preparing for my second launch, and that was
Hmm.
for the Toffee collection, where I created four different illustrations, which all included different shades of brown
Hmm.
as the background. And
Hmm.
I got a little cocky, and I was like, I don't need to get the assets approved. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna send them in and get them printed. Like, I don't need approval of what the print is going to look like. So I sent it right in, and I spent like a band on that drop for, I think, maybe like, yeah, for the four prints. I had spent like $1,000. Now, at the time for me, that was a lot of that felt like a lot of money. And they all came back printed wrong.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's actually what caused me to buy my own printer. And my printer was like $1,300. So I was like, okay, like if I'm going to go ahead and spend all this money on printing, I might as well make the investment on
Hmm.
myself and be able to print them as the orders come in and print on demand. So,
Right.
I mean, when it comes to creating your own prints, I think number one, you need to assess like the size of your market. If
Hmm.
you are just starting off, it may be best to go ahead and invest in someone who can print the prints for you,
Right.
and maybe even drop ship them for you. So
Right.
that was something that I was looking at some point, and then when it came time, it was like, all right, let me make this investment for myself. I
Hmm.
understand that this is a viable market for me and something that
Hmm.
people are willing to continuously purchase. So the
Right.
investment of my own printer was in fact worth it at that point.
Hmm.
Don't think it would have probably been worth it originally, but afterwards it was like, okay, this is what makes sense right now. And from there, I mean, I've just continued to sell my prints. It's been a great form of like passive income, and the orders just come in. I don't have to sit there and illustrate again because you have prints of the work, and
Right.
that was that hurt my soul when it happened. That hurt my soul, but everything happens for a reason. We are
Right.
where we are now, so
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to move on in terms of collaboration. So you work with Canva, especially with ESPN for College Game Day. You also, work with the NBA All-Star HBU Students Showcase, and you work with Coach to design a custom jacket for Michael B. Jordan, like how you mentioned earlier. So I definitely want to get into, like talk about some of the collaborations, but also how important is collaboration?
Collaboration is extremely important. I think there are honestly, and even now, there are days where I'm like, I don't think it really hits me, the projects that I've been a part of and had the privilege to be a part of.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, even just being able to say like, "Oh, I got to design a jacket for Michael B. Jordan," like it doesn't feel real. Like I love Michael B. Jordan. Yeah, it doesn't even feel
Right. Yeah.
real, like honestly. And so I would say like just having the opportunity to collaborate with such amazing brands, like it doesn't
Mhm.
only, it's not just satisfying for me, but it's an even greater feeling knowing that I can inspire other artists to dream this big and to know that you can
Hmm.
work at these brands and that these brands will pay you what you're worth. Um, and like I'm fresh out of college. My graduation was 2 weeks ago. So
Right.
I mean, to have this opportunity and to be alongside such great brands, being able to work with them, I mean, it's absolutely invaluable. In terms of collaboration, the importance of collaboration specifically, two heads are always greater than one. Two
Absolutely.
people are always greater than one when it comes to working together. And I
Hmm.
think because of the amount of work that I have had to do alone in terms of being a designer, there are times where it feels very difficult. It's not that it's difficult to work with other people, but I think it's difficult to, I'll say, give my ideas up, and be like, and bringing other people onto projects. And so I'm at a, I don't know if
Hmm.
that's making sense, but I'm at a point in my life now
Hmm.
where I want to be more intentional about not only working with brands, but working with other creators,
Right.
who are also establishing, their brands. And um, it is the reason it's so hard is because I think that a lot of times it feels like our ideas are like our babies and we want to
Right.
protect them, and we feel so responsible if something goes wrong. We want it to
Yeah.
come to fruition in the way that we have it in our head. And so I'm
Right.
really learning in this season to relinquish control and to kind of surrender in a way, and to realize that
Hmm.
like my ideas are not going to be the greatest they can be just by themselves, and that they're
Right.
going to be so much greater in collaboration with other people. So yes, 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 work with brands. It's an absolutely amazing experience, but
Hmm.
also work with other creators, continue to network horizontally and really just continue to amplify each other. So I would say that while I know the importance, I'm still learning to actually apply the knowledge that I have.
Hmm.
And like I said, learning to kind of surrender those things.
Yeah, yeah. It's very important to collaborate. And I think another reason why we hold our ideas so sacred is also because we're afraid that our ideas are going to get stolen from.
Yeah, that's real too. That's extremely real. I mean, mm, I can definitely say I've had issues with that. I remember one time I did a Protect Black Women design, and somebody was sending me like, "Oh, I didn't know that you were selling sweatshirts." And I'm like, I'm I'm not selling sweatshirts. They had actually like forwarded me someone had a whole page and they were selling my design on merchandise.
Wow.
And so I think when it comes to situations like that, like that's no fun. That's no fun at
Right.
all. I think I try not to take it too personally, but I think to an extent it does feel kind of insulting because of the time and effort that you put into
Hmm.
something, especially when it holds a significance for something outside of yourself. So like for that particular project, it wasn't just like, oh, I thought of this idea and I'm just doing it for fun. It had such a real significance to my life, to the lives of those that I care about. Um,
Hmm.
because I mentioned like it was my Protect Black Women design. And
Hmm.
to be able to have those conversations and then to see someone take that,
Right.
and try to profit off of it. It was discouraging. And I think that outside
Yeah.
of viewing it as, forget it being insulting, it was disappointing. because
Right.
I'm looking at you like, hey, this is something very real and true to me. And
Mm-hmm.
just I think we have to be very particular and very intentional about
Mm-hmm.
championing other artists and just being mindful
Right.
of giving them their credit where credit is due. I think
Right.
it's that simple. Like, even if you go on my account and you go on my social media, if there's a specific artist that inspired my work, I tag them, in
Mm-hmm.
the comment. I say inspired by so and so. And it feels
Yeah.
like it sounds so simple, but it makes such a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we want these brands to champion us and to give us our credit, but we need to do it for each other as well. And
Absolutely.
so that's something that I've had to learn to
Absolutely.
be very intentional about, because, for me to be inspired means it had to start with somebody else's idea.
But I definitely agree with what you're saying because, we have to be mindful, of these brands and things like that because it's so common, especially specifically with us as Black people. We have an idea and it gets stolen.
Yeah.
That's like with some of these dances on TikTok. Black person,
Yeah.
makes a dance trendy that they create on their own. They don't get credit for it. They don't get monetized for it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So if it's somebody, other than Black that's doing it, they get millions of followers, they get all the endorsements and things like
Yeah,
that. So
exactly.
yeah, so it's very important, for other people and also for us, like how you said, to credit each other in regards to the work that we do.
Hmm. It's like, if we are going to hold these brands to that standard, that's the same standard we have to hold ourselves to,
Hmm.
completely. And I mean, it can be discouraging being a Black creator at times,
Yeah.
because it doesn't always feel like people are on our side the way that we'd want them to be, and that
Hmm.
people care about championing us and making sure that we are earning what we're worth. Um,
Hmm.
but I would also say, in a way, that also encourages me to be that more particular about who I choose to work with. And
Hmm.
I want to work with brands who are going to say, you know what, like, no, you're worth more, and that's what we want to give you. I had an
Right.
encounter in February where I was working with a brand, and they asked me what my rates were. Um, I gave them my rate, and it was the first time I've ever had this experience. They came back and they were like, hey, we care about equitable pay. They more than doubled the budget for the project.
Hmm.
And so, to know that there are people like who will set the industry standards aside of, we're going to lowball them and, give them whatever they're willing to take, to know that there are brands who are going to say, no, this is what you're worth, and this is
Hmm.
what we're going to give you. Like, those are the people that you want to work with. Um,
Absolutely.
Completely. And it's a game changer, because it helps you know that moving forward, people do see your worth, and it
Hmm.
elevates your standard of the quality of brand that you're dedicated to working with.
Absolutely. And plus, you don't know who's looking.
You never know.
Yeah, you never
You
know who's
never know.
looking. You know, I definitely want to push forward and talk about favorite mediums. So, as a digital illustrator, or just as an illustrator in general, what are some of like your favorite mediums to use when creating artwork? Like whether it's like traditional or digital.
Honestly, I would probably say digital. I'm laughing because there's always this like internal kind of quarrel that I have with myself, where I have to remind myself, like, just because like digital art is still art, it's still real art.
Right.
There are,
Yeah.
there are times where I'm like, oh, like, there's so many shortcuts, and I think I feel kind of guilty about it, and I feel kind of bad, but I'm like, you know what, like, at the end of the day, it's still art. If this is something I
Right.
enjoy, stand in that.
Right.
So that is something that I love. While I love traditional art as well, I would say digital is probably my favorite. I do really appreciate just how much I can change my ideas as I go along.
Right. Yeah.
Probably have commitment issues, especially to my ideas, and I'm constantly like,
Mhm.
oh, I want to change the color. How would this look if I did
Right.
this differently? And it's like, you don't have to fully commit. I'm like, okay, if I do one version of the work, I can literally completely change it, change the colorway, and have a completely different design. So I would
Absolutely.
say that, like, having that space, that having that creative control when it comes to digital is really what makes it so enjoyable for me.
What programs do you use?
I use Procreate, and I'm finally learning Illustrator. That was like something that I held myself. I'm sorry. That was something that I held myself to over the summer last year.
Hmm.
I was like, I think I'm trying to remember. It was a brand that I was working with. Like they wanted all of the files vectorized, and I'm like,
Hmm.
all right, I got to get this together. From there, I was like, all right, let's get into Illustrator.
Right.
It was tedious as I don't know what, and it still is, but I definitely have learned a lot about it.
Hmm.
So I really, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, yeah. Illustrator can be, a doozy sometimes. It can be
Oh
a
my
little complex.
goodness. I'm like, it just feels so tedious. I'm like,
Right.
so what I've started doing though is I've started using Illustrator on my iPad so that I'm not sitting
Okay.
there on my computer having to use my trackpad and having to draw and not have as much control. I work really
Hmm.
well with things that emulate like a pencil or a pen
Right.
because that's what I use on Procreate. So that's just become a lot easier to. I open up the software on my iPad, use my Apple Pencil, and then I draw my vectorized work that way. That's
Right.
been a game changer. Like that has just
Hmm.
saved me so much.
Yeah. Also with Illustrator, you can do your own like patterns, repeat patterns, and things like that. And
Yes.
and the thing is also too with like the programs. The only thing that I really hate, as much as I love Illustrator, I work with a other program called Affinity Designer, which is like a cheap alternative to
Oh,
Illustrator.
what is it called?
Affinity Designer.
Affinity design. Okay. I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, so you pay like $50 and you have it, the
Oh, it's a one-time fee.
yeah, one time fee.
Nice.
Yeah, so
Very
I
nice.
use Affinity Designer to do like my illustrations and things like that. And the thing is, the only issue I had with a lot of these programs, like Illustrator or like Affinity Designer, it'll freeze.
Really?
Yeah, so you'll work on something. I've dealt with this during college. You'll work on something and it'll freeze. So now,
Does it save automatically?
yeah, it can automatically save, but
Okay.
it'll take you a couple steps back. But
Okay.
but I think after once or twice of the auto save, you may have just have to start over.
Yeah, that would crush me.
Yeah,
That would absolutely crush me. But I'll definitely have to check that out. You said it's called Infinity Designer.
Affinity Designer.
Affinity. Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, with an
Affinity
A.
Designer. Okay,
Yeah,
got
yeah,
it.
yeah. It's a
Yeah,
good
I'll definitely
program.
take a look at that.
I definitely want to go ahead and ask this question. So, with being an artist as well, do you always feel the pressure to create? Why? Why not?
Mm, that's a great question. Do I always feel the pressure to create? I would say more than feeling the pressure to create necessarily. I think I've constantly felt the pressure to create for other people. And
Hmm.
that's something that I've had to get out of is just creating because I think it's going to be something that everyone else will love, or
Right.
because I think that this is what's going to get the views on TikTok, or this is
Hmm.
what's going to get the likes on Instagram. Um,
Hmm.
I think that we can do ourselves such a disservice when we are solely concerned about the results. And I think
Right.
that at times that can really suck the authenticity out of our ideas and out of the projects that we want to execute.
Hmm.
So I've had to like consciously practice creating for myself and creating
Hmm.
things that I love simply because I love them
Right.
and not because I think everyone else is going to love it. Um,
Hmm.
and so while I don't necessarily feel pressure to create, I
Hmm.
think I have a very healthy relationship with creation. Um,
Hmm.
when it comes to that, like if I don't feel like creating, I'm not. We gonna find
Yeah.
something else to do.
Yeah.
I
You're
think
just not gonna
also
do it.
creation is so broad that just because I don't feel like, illustrating doesn't mean that I can't create content. I think
Hmm.
content is probably the one thing that I do feel pressure to create. I'm like, oh, I gotta
Hmm.
keep
Yeah.
my socials and I gotta keep showing people what I can
Hmm.
do. And like, yeah, I do feel the pressure from that a lot of times. And that's also something that I'm trying to unlearn because I want it to be something that I enjoy.
Hmm.
Creating should be something that we genuinely love to do. And
Right.
there needs to be balance when it becomes your job because, when it's what's paying your bills, it's so easy to be like, oh my goodness, this is draining me.
Right.
Yeah. And you have to really learn to create boundaries for yourself. Creating boundaries has been
Mm-hmm.
so crucial for me. But it has been such a game changer. I mean, to be very honest, like with June upcoming, I'm probably going to only work like the first 2 weeks of June. And there are times where I feel guilty for that. And I'm like, and I had this conversation yesterday. I was like, why do I feel guilty for that? Like, I'm blessed to be able to say, like, I'm, making what I'm making, and I still have 2 weeks at the end of the month to do whatever in the world I want. Um, having to train my mind to get out of this like hustle culture, I need to work 24/7. That's probably been one of the biggest struggles because, I'll sit here and I'll compare myself to other people, and I'm like, I could be so much further if I was doing this or if I was doing that. And I have to check myself and be like, hey, you're moving at the pace that works for you right now. I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. I'm not saying don't strive.
Right.
I'm not saying don't push yourself, but don't burn yourself out and don't overwork yourself. I've had the experience with that. I'm not trying to do it again. It's that simple. And so now I've learned to protect my peace. I've learned to create boundaries in work. Even when it comes down to, I don't answer emails after a certain time.
Right.
Bottom line. I mean, I don't care what project it is. At a certain point, once my work hours are over, that email is not getting answered. I also don't converse about business through the phone. I do not give out my number because I understand that that's something that makes me anxious. And it's a case-to-case basis. That may not be something that, other people have a problem with. But for me, I know what makes me anxious. I know it disrupts my peace. And so I have to be very intentional about the practices that I involve in business and involve with creating so that it can be a process that I enjoy as much as possible.
I definitely want to move on to fashion and style. So if you had to describe the Rachel Motley aesthetic, what would it be and who influences your style?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is like, I'm just like a pop of color. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Like I used to be very like, I love all black clothing and like one pop of color. And I really moved into like, all right, let's kind of, throw colors together. But I really do love not neon, but bright colors. I would say I love vibrant colors. I think it's very funny that my style and my work go together so well, and that they both reflect one another. In terms of style influences, it's so much pressure for me to choose. Like, it just feels like so much pressure for me to choose. I'm really the kind of person that's just like, I see something, I like it, and oh, maybe I can incorporate this into, what I'm into. I wouldn't necessarily say I have any particular style influences. I would say honestly, probably just general New Yorkers. Like, people in New York will wear anything and they will find a way to pull it off. And I think that's been extremely inspiring for me because I'm like, okay, things that I wouldn't even try or wouldn't even think to wear. Like, my style when I live in DC is so different than when I would come home and like I'm out for the weekend in New York. Now that I'm living back in New York, just being able to go out to the city, my style looks so different than what it did when I lived in DC. And I'd say that New York it's such a free place. They are so open to people being different, to finding themselves. And it's so encouraging. And so, yeah, I'd say really New Yorkers inspire me. I wouldn't say that there's really any particular person, but definitely just the culture of New York and what it means to be a New Yorker.
Especially, being in New York, you're also, around like the garment district, so it's
Yeah.
known for fashion.
Definitely. I mean, like I said, people will really throw on anything here and they'll make it work. We're really big on thrifting. We're really big on secondhand apparel. And I mean, I think that's something that I've also just always loved growing up, was like, all right, like, I got my little check from work. I'm gonna go hit the thrift shop and, see what I can find. I'm at the point now where I'm like, trying to get myself to start upcycling things that I find when I go thrifting. Normally, I'll just wear it how it is, but I I love the idea of transforming things. I love fashion. I love style. And so I
Mhm.
am trying to kind of push myself into like, all right, Rachel, you
Mhm.
know, let's get this and let's change it into something new. I think where I struggle with when it comes to that is like, I kind of get a little attached to like pieces that I buy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got these pants for such a good price. Like, what if I mess them up? You
Right.
know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to try to upcycle them and mess them up, and now I can't find these again because I thrifted them, and
Right.
it's not just something I went in the store and bought. But
Right.
I think like that takes me back to just like the idea of art. Like you have to be open to failing, and sometimes
Right.
failing can turn into success. So you know, it's
Mhm.
just it's amazing how these ideas and these kind of epiphanies, I'll call them, they're all across the board. You can always
Mm.
find significance in something. And so, yeah, I'd say even with like learning to upcycle, I'm kind of learning to just relax. It's a piece of clothing, you know?
Right, right.
You mess it up, it's not the end of the world.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
make
right,
your style what
exactly.
you want it to be.
Absolutely. Now, do you have a certain aesthetic in terms of nails, nail art?
Oh, I am honestly okay. So there's the first person that comes to mind. I think her Instagram is like was good. Do you know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about?
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
I love, 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 love the nails that she gets done. And I'm always like, oh, I would love to try something like this. The nail salons in New York, they charge you an arm and a leg. So I would really say that's probably the only reason why I haven't gone is like outward or and with nails as I maybe want to. I've thought about taking the time to like, okay, let me sit down and design my own nails and I'm not against it. Maybe that can be a project that I try soon. I think that would be a lot of fun. But I do really love the kind of extravagant look and the all over the place and this nail, got one thing going on, the next nail got something else.
Right.
Like I'd say probably my most fun set of nails was when I was painting Coach bags at the
Mhm.
flagship store in New York City on Fifth Ave. And
Mhm.
all of my nails were like a different design. So I had like
Mhm.
one that was like a smiley face. I had one that was like dripping. One was plaid and checkered. I mean,
Mhm.
each nail was something different. And that's probably been like one of my favorite sets to this day. Um, choosing, I'm a very indecisive person. So choosing what my nails are going to look like can sometimes be so daunting because I don't want people to mess them up. But you know what? That really could be like it could just be an area where I'm like, all right, I got to pull the trigger and try it myself. But
Right.
in terms of style, I mean, I would say I'm really as outward as, I could possibly go. It's just more so about like, is this a habit I can start funding yet?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mhm. But also too, I like your natural hair. I love how you have, like, your whole afro just all out
Thank
and things like that. Now, how
you.
long did it take for you to grow, like, your hair, your natural hair?
I did a big chop in 2016, so that was a while ago. And in between there, I'll usually just cut off like 2 to 3 inches. Nothing super serious. Like I need to trim at times. I need to trim now. Um,
Right.
so I mean, I I can't really. I don't really think that I really sit down and like measure the time that it takes necessarily.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just be walking around my hair looking crazy sometimes. I'm gonna be really honest with you. As much as I love my hair, there are times where I'm like, this needs to go. I think I
Right.
think I think I'm ready for another big chop, if I'm being very honest. I'm ready to kind of
Mhm.
try something new. I think I do have an attachment to the fro, but it'll
Mhm.
grow back. It's hair.
Right.
Yeah, but I will say like it kind of has my fro has become in ways like my staple and um it's so interesting the reactions.
Mhm.
I was in my apartment going up the elevator one time and this man was like, "Is that a wig?" And I was like, "No, sir. Like, no,
Hilarious.
it's not." But I'm like, the things that people will dare to ask me, it's sometimes I just can't even believe it.
Yeah.
It's yeah. And I think I expected it less being in New York. But shocker, people say anything up here. Um,
Right.
it's quite the experience though. It keeps people on their toes, and boy does it keep me on my toes as well.
Right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to talk about this one important topic because you talked about in one of your blog posts, it's called "The Strength in Our Weakness," where you discuss the hurdles and obstacles that you face, in this and within also the imposter syndrome. You
Yeah.
talked about in a moment where you had a speaking engagement that you had to do, and you were going through negative thoughts, and you also talked about how you were able to manage them. You said, quoting, "Normally in the moments I felt weak, I'd pray. In that moment, I was so ready to give into my emotions that I didn't bother praying. I didn't want a remedy. I just wanted to give up and stay home." So tell us more about the experience with that talking engagement and at that moment, but also were there any other experiences that you've experienced weakness, and how have you been able to overcome those moments?
Yeah. Wow. That's a great question. Thank you for even mentioning that one. So that turned out to be such a beautiful experience. I know that I probably said it like so many times on the call, but I really do have so much gratitude just for the opportunities that I've been granted. And with that particular experience, I was still in college at the time. I was taking a weekend to come back home to speak in New York City alongside some of the best within the ad industry. Excuse me. Um, that alone was intimidating, but because of quarantine and when everything was happening, I'd spent so much time alone that now having
Mhm.
to go back out and learn to rebuild connections with people, that was just something that I was really struggling with at the moment and continue to struggle with to this day. Um, Granted, I think I have definitely come a very long way, but
Mhm.
I just remember waking up that morning and just feeling like, number one, I was the youngest one on the panel. So everybody
Mhm.
else was at least 35 and above. It was like 35 to maybe 60.
Mhm.
Um, and so here I was at that time, 22 years old. And so all I'm thinking is like, why is the audience going to want to listen to me? Like
Right.
I
Mhm.
was really struggling with this idea of being qualified. And at the time, I was reading the story of Moses in the Bible. And
Mhm.
long story short, about Moses being scared to go into Egypt and to
Right.
speak to Pharaoh. Um,
Mhm.
and Moses was talking about how he had a speech impediment, or something
Right.
alluding to him struggling to speak normally, I'll say, for lack of a better word.
Right.
Um, and that was just such a profound realization for me, because it made me realize, like, I don't call myself to these things. It's God who calls me, and it's God who qualifies me.
Right.
And if God has provided me the opportunity to share my experience with other people, you know, not only am I doing myself a disservice, but I'm doing others a disservice when
Right.
I lean into that fear. And
Right.
when I tell myself, like, no, I'm not qualified to speak on something. At the end of the day, when people come to you for an opportunity, there's a reason why they want you. And
Right.
whether or not you're able to see it in yourself, they see something in you. And you have to learn to trust that.
Right.
So I think even now
Absolutely.
there's so many instances where I feel like I'm not even qualified for a job. And I'm thankful that my process into creativity constantly draws me closer to God, because I know that I
Mhm.
can't I can't rely on myself. Like, I don't believe in my own ability enough to
Right.
try to do this without God.
Exactly.
And so even when it came down to something as simple as speaking, like I was sharing with my friend today, my friend who I'm so thankful for and who really pushes me into being the best creative and follower of Christ that I could possibly be. And
Mhm.
we were just talking about the fact that before you do something, it feels so scary. And after the fact, you're like,
Right.
this is this is all it took. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
humorous almost.
Exactly. Right.
But I have such a great appreciation for that, for those moments. And I think even now, like, I had just explained that I had to renegotiate, and that was something I was terrified of doing. Like, there are so many instances where I'm like, I do struggle with imposter syndrome, but I constantly have to remind myself of who God has called me to be,
Right.
and that the plan He has for me is so much greater than the plan that I have for myself.
Mhm.
And just reminding myself, like, the expectation that I set for myself is a reflection of what I think He's capable of. I wouldn't box God, so why would I box myself?
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not.
Exactly.
We have to be so cognizant of that, in particular, about allowing greatness to happen in our lives. Greatness is only going to happen as much as you allow it to. Opportunities are only going to come in as much as you allow them to.
Right.
And so I'm not saying every open door is one that you walk through. No, that's not what
Right.
I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if it's going to be fear that stops you, or if it's fear that's making you question whether or not you should go through with it, you need to go through with it every time.
Hmm.
You need to go through, and you need to walk through that fear every time. If fear is what has the potential of stopping you, I think that for me is where I'm able to be like, okay, if I know the reason I would say no to this opportunity is because I'm scared, I have to force myself to do it.
Hmm.
And it's like being in the gym and building a muscle. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And
Hmm.
so it really just does come down to recognizing, like, I don't just trust in myself. I trust in a God who is so much greater than me and who calls me to do certain things and to act as a vessel. And if I can't motivate myself, at least learning to let that motivate and encourage me.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add on to that, and I like how you said that because that's back to what you said earlier, was doing it afraid.
Yeah,
You
do
even
it
spoke,
afraid and do it scared.
yeah,
Yeah.
do it scared, because that's what can propel you. Like fear can hold you back or it can propel you.
Yes.
So that's the thing with that. And also too, what I liked about what you said in your TikTok video about doing it afraid
Yeah.
is you gotta learn to stop making excuses. Cause at some point it's like, yo, you don't take the sleep or what? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's
It's
what you
like,
gotta do.
pick a side, like,
Hmm.
you can't spend too much time thinking about how you're going to jump and how you're going to get over there. And
Hmm.
I always want to be very clear in my words that like, I'm not saying don't plan, and
Right.
don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
things through. But when it comes to fear, yeah, you have to just take that jump. I mean, at the end of the day, and like, this is, I don't know where I read this. And funny enough, my friend also said it to me today. But I remember, it was years ago. It was like when I first got into college. I remember I was probably reading about imposter syndrome, and it said, like, the worst somebody could say is no.
Right.
Like, the worst that happens to somebody is like, no, we don't want to work with you, or we're not willing to pay you that much. Okay. And you regroup from there. I
Right.
recently, to be very transparent, I applied for a residency over the summer, and I didn't get the opportunity. Um, and something like that honestly would have crushed me 3 years ago, even probably a year ago. Something like that would
Mhm.
have crushed me. It probably would have sent me spiraling into, am I not who I think I am? Is my talent not where I think it is? And I just had to be like, okay, this just isn't God's plan for me right now. And
Mhm.
maybe it will be down the line, maybe it won't be. But at the end of the day, I know that I serve a God who comes before me and who has already ordered my steps. So
Right.
anything that doesn't work out for me, it's no beef with the company. It just wasn't for me, and the opportunity was for somebody else. And I think learning to accept what is going to be for me is
Right.
so comforting. Being at
Mhm.
Howard, I remember people would always say, like, what's for you? What would they say? Something about, like, essentially what's for you is always going to be for you. Something along those lines. And I just think
Mhm.
that there's so much truth in that, and so much truth in understanding, like, it may
Right.
be hurtful in the moment, but I serve a God who does things for my good and who is looking out for my good and who already has a plan for where He wants to take me. So if something doesn't go the way that I wanted it to, that's okay. You know, take the
Mhm.
time to feel how you feel. If you feel sad, you can feel sad. You're allowed to feel sad and take the
Hmm.
time to process how you feel. But know that when it's time to get up and move forward, that's exactly what you need to do.
Right. And do it afraid,
And yeah,
because me personally, I've dealt with times where, certain opportunities I didn't take advantage of. And as I've gotten older, I've understood like, yo, do it
yeah,
afraid, and that's what I have been doing, you know what I mean? So that's the thing, or
I
I do my best to
still
continue
struggle
to
with
do.
that.
Yeah, I still struggle with that too.
Yeah, there are definitely instances where I don't feel qualified for something.
Right.
And I just have to continue to remind myself of all of I really something that a practice that I found to be very helpful in my personal life is I have a little sheet where I write down, it's like my schedule sheet, and I use
Right.
my iPad to write my schedule for the day. And I also write down three things that I'm thankful for, three things that I want to improve upon and do better at.
Hmm.
And I mean, it helps me keep record of the ways that God has been faithful and of the ways that He's kept His
Hmm.
promises. And I mention that because I think writing your wins down is so important because in the
Right.
moments where you feel like you can't do it, you're reminded, like, hey, I did something just like this a couple months ago. And it always works out the way that you need it to. So why would it not work
Right.
out this time?
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think like just instilling those little practices into your life really does make all the difference. It's comforting to know that, on the other side of something is either it's a perceived success or it's a perceived failure. And the reason I say
Right.
perceived success or perceived failure is because I could have viewed me not getting this opportunity to work for the residency for this amazing company as a failure. Like, no, I didn't get the position. But I
Hmm.
know that that makes room for something else that God has planned for me during the summer.
Right.
So it's all about how you frame things. And you're
Right.
never gonna know if you don't try. At least try. The worst somebody could tell you is no.
Yeah, absolutely. It's better to try than not try at all.
Exactly.
Y-
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You don't know what the opportunity will hold and things like that. So
You never
definitely,
know.
yeah, just do your best to take advantage of opportunities as best you can. You know what I mean? And that's the thing with that. But I definitely want to push gears and talk about mental health, because I think mental health is very important in the Black community, especially within our generation. So how have you been able to balance being an artist with mental health?
I think honestly, being out of school has made all the difference for me. If I'm gonna be very transparent, I in college I did really I was fighting depression very heavily. Um
Mhm.
and it's so weird now when I say that because it feels so far away. Like it doesn't even feel like it's like my story, but it was. And there
Mhm.
was a time where like, I wasn't enjoying waking up every day and I wasn't enjoying the things that I had in front of me and the
Mhm.
quality of life that I was living. Um and I think for one, it did really come down to creating boundaries for myself. I think that I had to create a much healthier relationship with creation, the same way that you have to create healthy relationships with your significant other and with your siblings and your friends. Is the same way
Right.
that I needed to create a healthy relationship with my employment and my career, my work,
Right.
especially because I'm someone who balance is not my strong suit. And
Mhm.
I am always on one end of the spectrum.
Right.
I'm a radicalist in every way possible when it comes to something that I care about. And so last year, actually, I had to take the time and be like, hey, I'm not illustrating for the last quarter of the year. Um,
Mhm.
I knew that I needed a break because my
Mhm.
mental health was just it was plummeting, and I had
Right.
so much fear because I'm like, this is how this is how I make my money. What in the world am I gonna do? And I just had to constantly remind myself like that God will continue to provide. If this is what He wants me to do, if He wants me to take this break, He will continue to provide for me. Um, and I mean, the way that last year turned out was absolutely unreal. Um, I mentioned that to say, though, that creating boundaries, it's really what's going to make or break you in your
Right.
creative journey. and
Absolutely.
not just in your creative journey, but in life. Um,
Absolutely.
and as someone who has dealt with people pleasing tendencies,
Hmm.
creating boundaries is not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
Um, but I have had to learn that like I can't pour from an empty cup, and that
Right.
if I'm not, filling myself and doing the things I need to do in my own private life, I can't create the way that I want to. And so
Right.
I encourage artists to take inventory. That's something I always say, take inventory, figure out where you are right now. If you're
Right.
not in a space to be creating, okay, and let me say, I understand that it is an immense privilege to be able to say, oh, I'm just gonna, not illustrate for 4 months. I understand that everyone is not in a predicament as to where they can just step away from what is providing them financial stability.
Right.
And I always want to be very cognizant of the fact that people have different circumstances.
Hmm.
And so, if you have the privilege, take that time and take that space. And if you don't have the privilege, figure out what taking space can look like for you.
Hmm.
I think it's as simple as, for me, like, I know that things that relax me are taking bubble baths, like, and it's something so simple, but it makes a difference in my day. you know i
Hmm.
i, I eat off these little heart plates in the morning, and it sounds so foolish, but I'm like, I know the little things that bring me joy,
Right.
and I have to keep doing those things.
Hmm.
And they do make all the difference. The details make the difference. When you think of a painting, it's the details. It's that if I'm painting lips and I'm painting the gloss, the white lines to
Right.
emulate the gloss and something, it's those little details. So why do you think when it comes to art and it's the little details that make the difference, that it's not going to be the same thing in your day-to-day life?
Hmm.
It is, and when you view your life as art, it's so much easier to recognize that. So
Absolutely.
take the time to account for the things that bring you joy and do more of it. I would say that's
Hmm.
really what's been the game changer in my mental health. Um, and it doesn't always feel easy, but it's like, okay, I know that if I'm struggling right now with where I am in life, at least let me take the time to think about the things that do bring me happiness and do bring me joy, and let me do more of those things. There is a
Hmm.
there's a threshold of control that I do have. Um, and in the things that I can control, I want them to be beautiful and I want them to be intentional and purposeful.
Yeah, absolutely. And also too, especially, saying it's okay to take breaks and, to really look out for yourself is very, very important, and that goes with what you said also with opportunities. Not every opportunity you have to take advantage of, you know what I mean? Especially
Ooh,
if something that's too much. You
yeah,
know what I mean? If it's too much for you to handle and things like that, or if you don't feel ready for something, it's okay to feel that way. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So of course, not only take advantage of opportunities, but be selective of what opportunities you pick and
yes.
choose.
I set a boundary for myself this year, and I told myself that I was not going to accept projects below a certain rate.
Mhm.
And in January, I was offered the opportunity to work with an amazing brand. And the bottom line was that they were not, compensating what they, and it's no shame to them. Like, it's okay. But I think I was going back and forth with myself. Oh, but I need to make money this month. And
Mhm.
oh my goodness, like this, the, what do you call it? The exposure would be so great. And
Mhm.
I was just going back and forth with myself. And I just remember clear as day, God telling me, do not take it.
Right.
And I'm sitting here like, like, I have bills to pay.
Mhm.
I have rent that I need to pay. And um, I had to maintain that standard and say, hey, I told myself any illustrative projects, I was not going to work below, below this amount. So I ended up saying no. And in the moment, it was so crushing to me. But
Mhm.
I knew that, especially it being in January, and I had just made all my goals, and this is what I want to do this year. And I knew that I was, I'm trying to figure out the exact wording, but I knew that I was setting the standard for what I was going to accept for the rest of the year and forward.
Right.
And I had to be like,
Absolutely.
I know that if I'm willing to fold right now because I need this money and this is a great brand, I'm going to be willing to fold later on. And I'm so thankful that I went ahead and I didn't take the opportunity. No, I think literally a month later, I actually landed my highest paying brand deal. And that to me was just confirmation of like, when you choose to be obedient and when you choose to listen to what God is telling you, he's always going to come through. He's always going to provide. And that was so eye-opening for me. I'm thankful once again. I have so much gratitude for the discomfort in my life because of the lessons that come out of it.
Right.
And I mentioned that because once again, it just goes back to creating boundaries, and it just goes back to the standard that you're willing to hold yourself to. And if you need an accountability partner, call up one of your friends and be like, hey, this is a goal that I'm setting for myself. I know it's going to be hard to do this. Is this something that you would be willing to help me, keep track of and just hold me accountable for? I'm so thankful for my support system and for my friends, my best friends, Casey, Bella, Alma, like shout out to all of them. My partner previously was, so supportive, and they have just always been so encouraging of my growth. And so, yeah, just also having that support system, like,
absolutely,
it makes all the difference.
Absolutely, most definitely. I could totally agree with that. Now that you are a graduate from Howard University, where do you see your future in the next 5 years from now?
Oh, I hate this question. It terrifies me. 5 years. I'm what, 23 now? I'm 28. Oh my goodness. Wow. It's so okay. This is probably a little off track, but it's 23 feels like that age where I'm like, I think it's like the first time where I feel like I'm like getting older. And I've always felt like I'm getting older, but something about 23 is like, oh, like it's not a joke anymore. Like it was funny before, like it's no longer a joke. Like life is getting really real. I don't know if it's just graduating from college, but I don't think that's what it is. I think the 23 kind of feels like I be feeling like I'm too young to be, talking to certain people and not old enough to be like conversing with other, like it's so weird. It's like a little mind boggle. But 5 years, in 5 years I'll be 28. And as much as I want to say I have no clue what I'm going to be doing, I do want to take this opportunity to speak life into myself and into my future. And I really would like to be creative directing at that point. I'll probably be illustrating here and there, but definitely not as much as I would be now. I can't wait to jump over into creative direction. I have so many ideas. I love doing research. The things that come along with creative direction, I really am passionate about. And I really hope to have my consulting services up and running, really fueling the quality of life that I want to live. I also really, really, really want to be teaching. I don't know how that's going to come about, but one of my biggest dreams is to fund a creative center in an underprivileged
that'd be cool.
neighborhood. I would absolutely love to. I don't know if that's like my 28-year-old goal, but I would like to be moving in that direction.
Right.
Continuing with the brand deals, and just really having the opportunity to pour into other people.
Absolutely.
Really having the chance to help other creators navigate the things that I'm navigating right now at this part of my life, and in my creative journey. Some of the brands I want to work with, I would love to work with like Birkenstock. I would love to work with Crayola, Lego.
That'd be cool.
I would so love to work with Lego. yeah, just really, I don't know, like I want to be all over the place. I want to be
Hmm.
the person that people are like, oh, we need, it's a design project. Let's get Rachel on it. Like that's
Right.
my dream, is like no matter what kind of design project it is, there's a way for me to fit into that vision. And I just want to continue to expand my areas of expertise so that people can know, like, hey, I'm open for anything and I just want to try things and learn as I go. And so in the next 5 years, yeah, I hope that's what I'm doing. I hope that I'm doing what I'm doing now at a greater rate, also expanding in a
Right.
creative direction, um,
Hmm.
and teaching, 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 teaching. I love youth, and I love kids. And optimally, I really would love to be teaching kids about leveraging their social media, and kind of just dipping into art and
Yeah.
design.
Mm. Yeah, that'd be really, really cool. Last but not least, where could people find you on social media? And how could people support you and your business?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you asking that question. So I can be found on socials, Instagram at the real RJM. It's RJM. People mix it up and put JRM. It's not JRM. It's RJM. Those are my initials. And then for TikTok, it's at the real period RJM. Um, LinkedIn, Rachel Motley. Uh, And then in terms of supporting the business, I mean, honestly, interacting with content really does make such a big difference. I mean, I just love to know that the time and effort I'm putting into making videos and sharing my experience is helping other people. If you love, decor and need some home decor, check out my website, therealrjm.com. I have some
Hmm.
prints up there and they are on sale at the moment. So check them out. And yeah, if you're looking for creative consulting services, feel free to reach out on any of the above listed platforms.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for jumping onto the show. Your work is absolutely cool. I love what you're
Thank you.
doing. I had a very wonderful conversation with you. You're a very, deep thinker, and
Thank
I
you
just
so
I just
much.
love that about you. How you're so articulate, and you're not afraid to speak your mind and keep it real as well. So just thank you so much for this wonderful, fabulous conversation.
Thank you for having me. This was such a pleasure. And I'm so glad that we were able to connect and really just, talk about our journeys together. So this has honestly been a pleasure and I appreciate you.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Take care.
You as well.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to click the bell for notifications. Also, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Be sure to check out my website, ASIATHABIRD.com, and be on the lookout for more interviews to come very soon. Take care, stay healthy, and stay beautiful.